We live our lives under a comforting delusion of stability. We perceive the economy as a governed, predictable system of social contracts signed in ink and backed by the steady hand of central authority. We trust that the value of the currency in our pockets will remain roughly the same from the moment we wake until the moment we sleep. But that trust is a fragile mask, and it is slipping. Imagine a world where the very concept of a price has become a hallucinatory variable. Imagine a nation that has abandoned the safety of the sovereign state to worship at the altar of a decentralized, digital ghost. We have been told that Bitcoin is the future of freedom, a shiny peckerman of wealth that bypasses the corruption of banks. But freedom, when stripped of its guardrails, becomes a clinical descent into madness. Today, we peel back the skin of the Bitcoin-only country to expose the financial delirium and the total liquidation of the social order. This is the death of the market. Welcome to Discovered. To understand the nightmare, we must first look at the psychological weight of volatility. In a traditional economy, inflation is a slow-moving predator. In a 100% Bitcoin economy, it is a lightning strike. Picture your morning routine. You grab your coffee, and the barista asks for 0.00013 Bitcoin. By the time you finish your first sip, that number has changed 3 times. By the time you reach the bottom of the cup, the price has doubled. This is not just market movement. This is the total erosion of the human ability to plan for the future. When a currency can lose 15% of its purchasing power while you are in the grocery store line, the act of buying becomes a high-stakes gamble with your survival. Tomato prices bounce harder than a meme coin on a Monday morning, and a citizen is reduced to a day trader just to put bread on the table. We see the first whispers of this delirium in the case of Bhutan. For decades, this kingdom measured its prosperity through gross national happiness. But in a dark technological pivot, happiness has been replaced by hash rates. In the deep shadows of the Himalayan mountains, massive crypto mines hum with a predatory intensity. Cooled by the thin mountain air and powered by the diverted lifeblood of 100% hydropower, the rivers that once sustained ancient agriculture are now being fed into silicon brains to validate blocks. In the early bull runs of 2025, the reserves hit nearly $1 billion, nearly 30% of the country's entire GDP. But this is not wealth. It is a precarious hallucination. To raise public sector salaries by 65% based on the proof of work of a digital token is to build a house on the edge of a volcanic crater. The Santa Claus of Bitcoin does not bring gifts. He brings a systemic fragility that can vanish with a single line of code. The danger goes deeper than the price. We must examine the central chaos of a nation without a central bank. For the central bank has been the planet's economic safety net, the authority that tweaks interest rates and provides liquidity during a crisis. In a Bitcoin-only country, there is no authority. There is only the algorithm. If a pandemic strikes, if a war breaks out, or if a famine begins, the state is paralyzed. It cannot print to save the starving. It cannot lower rates to stimulate a dying industry. It is a slave to a fixed supply of 21 million coins. The International Monetary Fund calls this cryptoization, and they frame it as a danger, but for the citizen, it is a death sentence. It is like doing brain surgery with TikTok tutorials while the patient is bleeding out. Consider the government budget on a YOLO curve. When a state collects its taxes in Bitcoin, it enters a state of permanent fiscal delirium. Imagine a government that collects its revenue on Tuesday, only to find that by Friday, when salaries for doctors, soldiers, and police are due, the value of those taxes has been cut in half. Managing public spending with crypto is like funding a national healthcare system with lottery tickets. The social safety net is replaced by vibes. If you live on a fixed salary, your life becomes a nightmare of uncertainty. One day your rent costs a sandwich, the next day it costs a Tesla. There is no negotiation. There is only the cold mathematical indifference of the blockchain. Then, there is the digital divide, which is, in reality, a form of social execution. To exist in a Bitcoin-only economy, you must possess stable internet, a high-end device, and the technical literacy to manage private keys and seed phrases. What happens to the elderly? What happens to the poor? What happens when grandma loses her paper backup? Her retirement fund, her entire life's work doesn't just depreciate. It vanishes into the void of the one South and O South. The IMF warns that this model excludes the vulnerable and fuels the dark machinery of money laundering. But the true horror is the digital ghetto. A class of citizens is created who can no longer participate in the economy because they cannot sync with the Block-Fiestas. The case of El Salvador provides a forensic look at this failure. Despite being the first to legalize Bitcoin, the reality as of 2025 is a landscape of low adoption and high losses. The magic wand of legal tender did not bring a golden age. It brought a massive gamble with the national treasury. People still cling to the US dollar because the human mind requires an anchor. To go 100% crypto is to cut the anchor and drift into a storm with a parachute made of hope. It is a world where the Strait of Hormuz or a tweet from a billionaire can determine if you eat dinner tonight. We must look at the energy gluttony of this delirium. Mining Bitcoin consumes a truckload of energy for every transaction. In a nation that goes all-in, the power grid becomes a battlefield. We would see energy apartheid, where electricity is diverted from hospitals and schools to keep the mining rigs cool. To try and mine Bitcoin in your bedroom without a massive AC unit and a fire extinguisher is a recipe for a thermal disaster. On a national scale, it is ecological suicide. We are burning the physical world to sustain a digital fantasy of wealth. The economic collapse would be a black swan event of unprecedented scale. Imagine a nation where the housing market is tied to BTC collateral. You mortgage your closet today, hoping to own a castle tomorrow, only to find that a market correction has turned you into a debt slave for a parking spot. The housing agency becomes a casino. The labor market becomes a roulette wheel. The proof-of-like algorithm of the internet becomes the only judge of your worth. We would see the rise of hashed kingdoms, where the branding is viral but the infrastructure is crumbling. Digital tourism promises yak-jerky cashback, but the reality is a nation that has traded its sovereignty for a seat on a roller coaster without seatbelts. The post-credit scene of the original humorous script spoke of a local bakery turning $4 million into $1 billion. But for every bakery that strikes it rich, 1,000 families are wiped out by a rug pull. In a 100% crypto nation, there is no insurance. There is no FDIC. If the exchange is hacked, if the private key is stolen, or if the Solana meme storm turns into a lasercat disaster, you are on your own. You are standing in a Solomon wishing well with no coins left to toss. The Dogecoin diaries and the proof of law are the coping mechanisms of a population that is slowly realizing it has been Dutch-hoven by its own ambition. This discovery, this realization of the total delirium of the crypto state is not a mind-blowing story. It is a final warning. We are a species that is attempting to replace the stability of the state with the volatility of the void. We are trading the social contract for a smart contract that has no mercy and no memory. The floor is thinner than you think. The digital digits that you use to measure your life are the only things keeping the abyss at bay. When the Block-Fiesta ends and the lights go out, we will realize that you cannot eat a Satoshi and you cannot build a home on a blockchain. The gross national happiness of Bhutan was once a beacon of light. Now, it is a hum of cooling fans in the dark. We are watching the liquidation of human dignity in real time, one block at a time. The only Bitcoin, baby. Slogan is a scream from a species that has forgotten how to count anything other than hash rates. We are a probability that has finally reached zero. If you are prepared to face the truths that the world chooses to ignore, stay with us. There are many more scientific anomalies and economic horrors waiting to be unburied. We will continue to explore the truths that have been hidden in the shadows of our logic and the depths of our limitations. Subscribe to Discovered and activate the notification bell. In a world of comfortable delusions and comedic volatility, we provide the cold, clinical evidence of reality. Do not miss our next report, where we will examine the next impossibly or almost possible scenario that threatens the very definition of humanity. See you in the next investigation. Remember, the candles are red, and the end. The end is exactly one block away. Keep your keys safe while you still have a door to open.